The monsoon had descended upon the small coastal town like a relentless beast. Rain hammered against the terracotta roof of Maya's home, a steady, drumming rhythm that usually lulled Rohan to sleep. But tonight, the storm felt different. More violent. More alive. Water streamed down the windows in thick, distorted sheets, blurring the familiar world outside into an indistinguishable gray. Inside, the small living room was a pocket of warmth and color. Rohan, a bright-eyed boy of 7 with a mischievous grin, was engrossed in building a fort out of old blankets and pillows. His toy car zoomed across the makeshift terrain, their plastic wheels clicking against the worn floor tiles. Maya watched him from the small kitchen, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. The wind howled outside, rattling the window panes with alarming force. "Rohan, stay away from the door, Beta," Maya called out, her voice a little louder than usual to be heard over the storm. "The rain is very heavy today." "Yes, Rohan replied, his attention still fixed on his game. A sudden, violent gust slammed against the back of the house. The lights flickered, plunging the room into momentary darkness before sputtering back to life. Maya's heart leapt. She hurried towards the back door, the one leading to their small garden, to make sure it was securely latched. She distinctly remembered locking it earlier. As she reached for the handle, she noticed it was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness and the deafening roar of the rain seeping into the room. "Rohan?" she called out, her voice laced with a sudden, icy fear. She turned back to the living room. He wasn't there. The blanket fort stood abandoned, his toys scattered around it. Panic seized her. "Rohan! Rohan!" Maya's voice was a raw cry, swallowed almost instantly by the downpour as she burst out into the storm. The rain lashed against her face, blinding and cold. Her clothes were instantly soaked, clinging to her like a second skin. "Rohan! Where are you?" She stumbled through the small, waterlogged garden, her bare feet sinking into the mud. The wind tore at her hair, whipping it across her face. She checked behind the few small trees, under the porch, but there was no sign of his small figure. "Kaku!" she screamed, her voice cracking with desperation as she ran towards her neighbor's house. Sarita Kaku, a woman whose face was a roadmap of wrinkles etched by time and worry, cautiously opened her door, peering out into the deluge. "Kaku, have you seen Rohan?" Maya's voice was choked with tears. "He was just inside." Sarita Kaku's eyes widened with concern. She shook her head slowly. "No, Maya. I haven't seen him since this rain started. It's like nothing I've seen in years. Be careful, child. This storm feels wrong." Maya's hope plummeted. Wrong. That was the word that echoed the growing dread in her own heart. The rain felt oppressive, almost sentient. Hours blurred into a frantic, waterlogged search. Maya ran through the narrow lanes of their village, calling Rohan's name until her throat was raw. The other villagers, alerted by Sarita Kaku, joined in, their figures hunched against the relentless downpour, their voices muffled by the storm. But Rohan was nowhere to be found. As exhaustion began to set in, a strange sensation washed over Maya. The sound of the rain, which had been a constant roar, seemed to subtly shift. Beneath the drumming and splashing, she started to hear faint, almost imperceptible sounds. Whispers. They were carried on the wind, too soft to understand, yet undeniably present. She stopped near the overflowing village well, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The whispers seemed to be coming from the direction of the downpour itself, a chorus of hushed voices she couldn't quite place. She shook her head, trying to clear it. "It's just the wind," she told herself, "the sound of the rain playing tricks on me." But the feeling of being watched intensified. As she looked at the rain falling against the stone walls of the well, she noticed fleeting patterns. For a split second, the swirling water seemed to coalesce into the vague outline of a small face, then dissolved back into the chaotic flow. Maya blinked, her heart pounding. She was losing her mind. Driven by a desperate instinct, Maya found herself back near the edge of their property, drawn to the ancient banyan tree that stood sentinel there. Its massive branches, usually a source of shade and comfort, now dripped ominously. The rain seemed to fall heavier around this particular tree, as if it held some strange significance. She leaned against the rough bark, her forehead pressed against the wet wood, tears mingling with the rainwater on her face. And then it happened. As she looked down at the trunk, the swirling rainwater flowing over the bark momentarily stilled, and for a crystal-clear instant, she saw it. A small hand, undeniably Rohan's, reaching out from within the dark, water-streaked wood. The fingers were pale, almost translucent, and the gesture was one of longing. The image vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving Maya gasping, her breath catching in her throat. "Rohan?" she whispered, her voice trembling. She reached out, her hand hovering over the spot where she had seen his. It was just wet bark, rough and cold. Doubt warred with a terrifying certainty. Had she imagined it? Was the stress finally breaking her? But the image had been so vivid, so real. Soaked to the bone and her mind reeling, Maya stumbled towards the local police station, a small, dimly lit building in the heart of the village. The officers on duty listened to her story with polite concern, their expressions a mixture of sympathy and skepticism. "Madam, we understand you're very upset," said Inspector Patil, a middle-aged man with tired eyes. "The storm is making things very difficult, but we have organized a search party. We'll check all the usual places, the river banks, the abandoned buildings." "But you don't understand," Maya pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. I think the rain. It's showing me things. I saw his hand. On the tree." Inspector Patil exchanged a worried glance with the constable beside him. "Madam, the storm, the worry. It can play tricks on your mind. We will do everything we can to find your son, but we need you to try and remain calm." "Calm?" Maya's voice was laced with hysteria. "My son is missing, and the rain. It's like it's alive. It's whispering." The constable cleared his throat. "We haven't received any other reports of whispering rain, madam. It's likely just the wind and the sound of the water." Maya felt a wave of despair wash over her. They didn't believe her. They thought she was hysterical. Alone with her terrifying visions and the unsettling whispers, she felt utterly helpless. Driven by a force she couldn't explain, Maya returned to the banyan tree. The search party had moved on, their flashlights cutting through the downpour in the distance. Here, under the ancient branches, the rain still seemed to possess a strange energy. The whispering sounds were no longer faint murmurs, they were more distinct now, a soft, sibilant chorus that seemed to surround her. She reached out and touched the base of the tree again, her fingers tracing the rough bark. This time, the vision was stronger, more immersive. She was no longer just seeing a hand. She was seeing Rohan. He was standing in a shadowy, rain-soaked version of their living room. The familiar furniture was there, but everything was muted, distorted, as if viewed through a veil of water. Rohan's face was pale, his small hands pressed against an unseen barrier. His eyes, wide with fear, seemed to be looking directly at her. She could see his lips moving, as if he were calling her name, but his voice was completely drowned out by the relentless downpour in the vision. The whispers intensified, swirling around her, some sounding like distorted children's voices, others like the mournful sighing of the wind through unseen spaces. They seemed to be coming from the tree itself, from the very air around her. Maya stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest. There was no doubt in her mind now. This was not her imagination. The rain, the tree. They were connected to Rohan's disappearance in a way she couldn't comprehend. Following the direction Rohan had been looking in her second vision, Maya's gaze fell upon something she hadn't noticed before, a small, overgrown well, almost completely hidden behind the thick roots of the banyan tree. The heavy rain had filled it to the brim, the surface dark and disturbed by unseen ripples. As she approached the well, the whispering reached a fever pitch, a chorus of soft, insistent voices. The rainwater within the well began to glow with a faint, ethereal luminescence. And then she saw him. A final, heartbreaking vision unfolded before her eyes. Rohan was submerged in the well, his small body suspended in the glowing water. But he wasn't struggling. His eyes were open, and they held a strange, serene expression. His pale face seemed almost peaceful, as if he were being held in a gentle, watery embrace. The whispers seemed to emanate from the depths of the well, a soft, sorrowful lullaby. Come home. Join us. Safe from the storm. Understanding crashed over Maya like another wave of the relentless rain. The rain wasn't just water, it was a conduit, a veil drawn thin. The well was a gateway. Something within the storm, something ancient and tied to this land, had taken her son, not with malice, but with a strange, unsettling comfort. The whispers were an invitation, a promise of peace in the heart of the storm. Tears streamed down Maya's face, mingling with the rain that plastered her hair to her forehead. She reached out a trembling hand towards the glowing surface of the well, her eyes fixed on the serene image of her lost child. Grief warred with a terrifying understanding, a silent question hanging in the rain-soaked air. Would she try to pull him back from this watery embrace? Or would the whispers, the promise of peace, draw her in as well? The relentless rain continued to fall, its soft, sibilant voices the only sound in the desolate landscape. The camera lingers on Maya's outstretched hand, the glowing water reflecting in her tear-filled eyes, leaving her choice, and Rohan's fate, shrouded in the mystery of the whispering rain.